Well, the Virginia General Assembly is off to a historic start. That's right. On the first day of last week, January 10th, the Virginia General Assembly elected its first African American as Speaker of the House. Also, the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus has its largest membership ever in the history of the Commonwealth. It's a historic day and a historic time for the Commonwealth itself. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric LaVille. We'll be right back to discuss the historic first day of the General Assembly. Thank you for joining us again for Stay the Water, where we bring movers, shakers, and policymakers to you to discuss issues important to the community. I'm your host, Dr. Eric LaVille, and as always, we thank you for your support as you support not only this show, but the greatest university in the world. That's right, none other than the Spartan Nation, historic and largest HBCU in the Commonwealth of Virginia, Norfolk State University, as we air on WNSB Hot 91, the Soul of VA, here on this campus. We hope that your new year is off to a phenomenal start and that you are sticking to your New Year's resolutions. Well, with that being said, not only is our year off to a great start, but I want to talk to you today about the historic first day of the 2024 Virginia General Assembly session. And as you know, those of you that are listening to this show, we're in our third year now. Every year we have our series, General Assembly series here, because we start the year off in January with our legislative session. So it's a full 2 months and 3 really as we go into March of a lot of great things that are happening, especially on the legislative front for our Commonwealth and our institution and our communities. And one of the great things I love about this time of the year is we're able to bring to you individuals, not just legislators and policymakers, but also individuals who are behind the scenes and helping to craft policy and advise members on how best to create the policies that will impact your community the greatest. And today I have with us a very good friend of mine and also an NSU alum, political strategist, Jasper Hendricks. Jasper, thank you so much for joining us here on Stay the Water.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Jasper, you're not only an NSU alum and a political strategist, but you are also here in the General Assembly. You're born and raised in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This is your home.
Yeah, it is. It is. Did work on behalf of the university in the General Assembly session under Dr. McDermott, Dr. Marie McDermott, who we recently lost. She actually entrusted myself and current State Delegate Candy Munden King to work in the university during the session to advocate on behalf of the school for necessary resources, and which is why we actually have like the Marie McDermott Center and also light rail and other things there on the campus. So it's indeed an honor and great time to be back in the Commonwealth at this moment.
Absolutely. And again, like I said, we're good friends and we talk politics all the time. And and we've both had similar experiences working for various members and working in politics for over a course of over 2 decades now. So, I find it an honor and great to talk with you about this historic day because, we both work for members of the Virginia General Assembly, both in the House and the Senate. We both know the process and we both know the struggles that it is to have and to achieve this mark that these individuals have achieved. We're not just going to talk about Duns Scott, which I think is a phenomenal story within itself, but we're going to talk about other members. From your perspective, and given the history that you have, tell me from your perspective, what did seeing Duns Scott as being elected as Speaker? By the way, he was elected 100-0. 100, every member of the General Assembly, both Democrat and Republican, elected him as Speaker of the House. And that's tremendous within itself. But when you saw it, what did it mean to you?
It was truly a awesome, experience. It was humbling. It was chilling. There were a lot of emotions to see the Black Chief Justice of the Virginia Supreme Court swear in the first Black Speaker of the House, and they're both are Black men, and Black men with various with different backgrounds, and to see that at this day and time, is one of those moments that Yeah, I actually was sitting back and thinking, like, man, I'm sounding like my grandparents right now. When I say, like, man, I never thought I'd see this in my lifetime, and to see the day being celebrated by so many African Americans, so many Black people, and not just Black people either. There were a lot of who celebrated on this day, and as you mentioned, 100-0, for him to be nominated by a Democrat and seconded by a Republican, for them to talk about how fair he is in legislating and also advocating for on behalf of the citizens of the Commonwealth of Virginia, it speaks volumes from on how far we've come, but still not losing sight of how far we have to go. I want to make sure we point that out, that what we do at this time is very important. With this time and this moment that we have is very important also. But taking a look at this day, I grew up in Farmville, Virginia, where they closed the schools to keep African Americans out. With my parents. My parents could not go to school in kindergarten. They had to find an alternative method of education. And to see it, and this was in the 1950s, 1960s, and to see where we are right now, where we have Don Scott, who was the Speaker of the House, you have Senator Louise Lucas, who is the Chair of Finance and the President Pro Tem. We even have a Black woman, Lieutenant Governor of Virginia serving at this time, and 32 Black people serving in the Virginia General Assembly, when, again, back in the 1970s, it was only one. 60s, 70s, it was only one person. So we've come a long way, and it was great to see that on Wednesday.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, you and I were together in the Capitol, when the swearing in took place. And it was just so many people there, so many family members, so many supporters from Portsmouth and all around the Commonwealth that was there to see that historic moment. And to your point, to see the Chief Justice, African-American male of Virginia Supreme Court, swear in an African-American male from Portsmouth as the Speaker of the House. It was tremendous, absolutely tremendous. And for me, I don't know about you, but it did my heart good to see his mother there. I think she was 88 years old, or is 88, but she was there. And just the emotion, the tears, his family, and so forth. As a matter of fact, according to the Virginia Mercury, it says a Portsmouth attorney and U.S. Navy veteran, 58 years old, was joined by his wife, teenage daughter, and 88-year-old mother as he took the oath of office. He credited his mother for his toughness and tearfully thanked his wife for believing in him when he was at his lowest, a reference to the nearly 8-year federal prison sentence he once served for drug-related offense. And, it says, quote, there are those who would tell you that you should be defined forever by mistakes, I said, but I'm here to tell you, do not believe them. When you mention, not just the historic nature of it, but the significance of his great story, to have, unfortunately made that mistake, getting caught up, and serving his time, but then also serving his country, going to law school, becoming an attorney, successful attorney, really fighting for the people in Portsmouth. And look, shout out to P-Town, right?
Right. I mean,
I mean, P-Town is...
There's a lot. But this should tell everyone, and we need, I don't want, let me back up for a second. His story needs to be known, across the country, especially in Portsmouth and, in other areas where Black men are, I feel, often overlooked in society and also in my community. Being a political strategist right now, we're going through this whole thing about, we hear a lot about Black women saving the Democratic Party and Black women, and, and it's like, you ask, like, well, what happened to Black men? And to see, again, I think the significance says, no matter what mistakes you may make over the course of your life, it does not have to define you in that moment, and it's what you do afterwards is very important. And I will point out, too, that, Monday I was in Maine, in the Maine legislature. Tuesday I was in the Tennessee legislature. And Wednesday, I was in Virginia. This is very different. It was a very different atmosphere in all three. However, Virginia, I think, showed the country how Black people really bring people together of all backgrounds, and to see, because not only when you saw him with his leadership, you see a diverse group of chairs, for different committees. And and he's including young people, and he's including a young Portsmouth native, and Norfolk State alum, who is now chair of City, Counties, and Towns Committee.
Absolutely.
So I think there's a lot more. We're going to see a lot more out of his leadership, but we need to tell his story, and we need to figure out a way to amplify that.
Absolutely. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric LaVille. You're joining us for our annual Virginia General Assembly series. And in this particular series, we're talking about the historic first day of the General Assembly, where the Commonwealth of Virginia elected its first African-American Speaker of the House, and also other historic designations and chairmanships by African Americans and women here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Here we're talking with our good friend and also political strategist and NSU alum, Jasper Hendricks, regarding this historic moment. Jasper, I want to go back just a second because I want to get into these other historic appointments as well, because it's one thing to see the person in the front, but it's the people in the back and in the committees that are really doing the hard work of policy. But when you talked about telling the story, Delegate Austin is a white male. He himself, a Republican, he said, "I want to thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this moment." He said relationships will overshadow partisan differences. As a matter of fact, according to the Virginia Mercury, the House elected Scott as Speaker in an unusual bipartisan unanimous vote. Delegate Terry Austin, Republican, seconded the motion for Scott, saying that he, quote, "he's confident the new Speaker will bring us together." Now, Jasper, you and I both know, working together in the General Assembly and, of course, in Congress is really a high bar. But for, again, someone from the other aisle to initiate that, I think we were in definitely great time and an opportunity to really, really do some good things here in the Commonwealth.
Yeah, I think so. And like I said, it's very different. In Tennessee, on the first day of session, they were fighting already. It's very confusing. That's why I see a lot of hope in Virginia, because I've been involved in so many, working in so many different legislative bodies, and I see that, I think that Virginia can lead the way in showing that civility, and that says a lot too, because I actually, that's the theme of Sorensen, and I know, I don't want to get into the Sorensen Institute at University of Virginia, but and that's I think a lot of the elected officials have to go through that. Well, they don't have to. You go through that program there. Where it talks about civility in politics, and you bring Republicans and Democrats together. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well.
Absolutely. According to the Virginia Mercury, when we talk about African-American representatives, it said that the growth in black representation this year, which came after a tumultuous redistricting process that forced many incumbents into retirement, was fueled partly by more black candidates winning, check this out, in wider parts of the state without majority black voting population. And when we talk about historic first, we're looking at the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus right now has 32 members. Now there's 140 total seats, right, between the House and the Senate. And the Black Caucus, black representatives, they are now numbering 32, the largest number ever. The Virginia Mercury also points out that traditionally, Richmond and Hampton Roads have been Virginia's centers of black political power, right? But now, this growth in black representation, we're seeing Northern Virginia's delegation include several black representatives, such as now Senator Jennifer Carroll Foy, who's a Democrat in Prince William County, who was first a delegate. She ran for governor. And now she's the new senator whose victory last year made her the first black person to represent that region in the history of the Senate. Isn't that something?
Mm-hmm. That's like you said, there are a lot. You have, and I think, but it's still not reflective of the overall population total.
Right.
And I think so. We still have a lot of work. We still have some work to do on that front. And again, this is the time to celebrate. Because we have been able to achieve, a lot, but we still also don't lose sight of of the goal. And that's the way it should be too, where African Americans don't live in just one area. So why should we just be eligible to run in certain areas? So, and I think we've been able to prove. But also, I want to take a look at the last fundraising data too, because I think I still don't think that fundraising was there as well, and financing those candidates. So.
Well, look, that's another conversation, right? Because so now we're talking about the parties actually investing in the candidates that their constituencies really want to support. But like I said, we'll talk about that on another show because that's a deep dive. But I want to kind of go back and focus on this historic nature, because when you also look at what's happening in Northern Virginia. Also, Senator Lamont Bagby, Democrat out of here, Henrico, who is also NSU alum, former delegate, now senator. He is the re-elected chairman of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus. In a press conference on Wednesday, the first day of the session, he also noted the caucus has now a dynamic duo who are running key committees in both chambers. And they are the budget committees. So Senator Eloise Lucas, who is an NSU alum as well, is now chair of the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee. And Delegate Luke Torian is again chairing the House Appropriations Committee. When you talk about that, he says that he's quoted to say that we're pretty proud of that. And he said that Governor Wilder always said, start with the money and follow it. It doesn't matter what the issue is, always follow the money. Jasper, when we talk about politics, we always talk about if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense, right? And
right.
Of course, there are other issues when we talk about expanding voting, the access to voting, expanding health care and so forth. But all that costs money, right? And to have two African Americans chairing those committees, that is powerful.
It is. And so, again, let's see what hopefully, we'll be able to have some results here too, and with some line item, budget stuff for Norfolk State, and and maybe the other HBCUs as well. But let's see if we can use this to our advantage.
Absolutely. Look, I want to take some time to take a look at some other historic appointments and elections to committees. We mentioned, of course, the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus. The chair, reelected, is Senator Lamont Bagby, NSU alum. And by the way, Norfolk State University has 6 representatives, 6 alums serving in the state legislature representing us. That's one of the largest number of graduates representing an institution. And so that's something that to show you what we produce here at NSU. Not only that, but Jasper, this election, Senator of Delegate Scott being Speaker, and all of these new elections and appointments of chairmanships comes on the heel of the late, great Yvonne Miller, Senator Miller, who, for those of you that don't know, NSU graduate, also for retired professor, first African-American born into the General Assembly Senate here in the Commonwealth of Virginia 40 years ago. On last week was the anniversary of that. Jasper, you knew Senator Miller, and of course you worked in the legislature as an intern under former President McDermott, and then of course for various members. What does that moment mean to you to see that this happens on this anniversary?
It meant a lot. Like I said, it was an emotional day, just to think about how far, how much progress has been made from Senator Miller, and and also Dr. William Ferguson Reed, who's still alive, is about to turn 100. Wow. I believe.
Really?
He was the first African American man elected to the General Assembly post Reconstruction. And he's still alive. He lives in Chevy Chase, Maryland, I believe now. But to know them and to hear their stories, and to take and also to listen to their advice, as they helped guide me in my when I began in politics, and so to look back, that's what I said, to sit there and look at it, the first African American Supreme Court justice swearing in the first Black speaker, is a day that I never thought would happen. But we worked hard. They worked hard. This is what we got. So,
Absolutely.
But don't lose sight of where we got to go. We still got work to do.
Listen, not just work to do, but also work together. Right. The Virginia Mercury also stated, in a state that once intentionally sought to disenfranchise Black voters, Black lawmakers now run both committees, meaning the money committees, with voting and also with voting and election issues. Senator Aaron Rouse, out of here, Virginia Beach, Democrat, is leading the Senate Privileges and Elections Committee. And on the House side, Delegate Marcia Price, Democrat out of Newport News, who has championed a state-level voting rights law, is chairing the Elections Committee. As a matter of fact, not only that, but when we start to look at these other historic designations, Jasper, not just the money committees or the election committees, but we also see, and first I'll start in the Senate, we also have Democratic Caucus Chair, Senator Mamie Locke, Democrat out of Hampton. Now, of course, Senator Locke is a retired educator. She is also a fighter, as she not only in the General Assembly, but also when she got her start in local politics as being elected as mayor in the city of Hampton, city council first and the like. And of course, that's the member that I worked under in the Senate as well. Her appointment as Democratic Caucus Chair in the Senate is also a huge, huge opportunity.
Yes.
What I'm saying? And also, let's go to the House. When we look at the House, we already talked about Don Scott as being Speaker, Senator Louise Lucas being Chair of the Senate Finance Appropriations Committee, and Delegate Luke Torian chairing the House Appropriations Committee. But also, the Majority Leader, Delegate Herring out of Alexandria, being the Majority Leader, and also the Democratic Caucus Chair, Delegate Kathy Tran, which is an Asian American out of Fairfax. Jasper, when we talk about the Democratic Party, a lot of times we look at it from an African American standpoint, but it's the most diverse party that we have in politics right now. Talk about the impact of that diversity when we just mentioned those two individuals that are chairing, leading caucuses and leading those important committees.
When you say who, I don't think we ever say. I know we talk about Black people in the Democratic Party a lot because we are, Black people, and I am a Black person in the Democratic Party. I don't want to speak for you, I don't want to label anybody. Right. But I know we had those conversations. It's reality. When you look at the other side, when you look at Republicans, you rarely see African Americans or any other person of color, or actually also gender on that side, because they still have, there's still not a lot of, white women, that are elected, within the Republican Party, and especially not, African Americans. I think, there are 3 Black women, I think, currently serving across the country, in the entire country as Republicans in their state legislature. Wow. They had 4, but I think, one lost re-election, so I think it was, 3, in the entire nation out of, the 800 or 900 Black elected officials, and state legislators across the country, and still, I think there's only 5 Black men, I believe, in state legislatures, across the country, again, out of the 900, Black state lawmakers. Although the Democratic Party is not perfect in its support of African Americans, candidates, the party is, performing ahead of the Republican Party when it comes to the number of people of color and, I guess, candidates who are diverse.
Absolutely.
Who are diverse.
And when you talk about diversity, also keep in mind that when sworn in, into the new role, we also had new senators. Senator Saddam Aslam Salim, a Democrat out of Fairfax, who was introduced as the first Bangladeshi American to serve in the Senate. And also, Danica Roem, Democrat out of Prince William, became the first transgender lawmaker to serve in the upper chamber, the latest indicator of growing LGBTQ presence in the state legislature, according to the Virginia Mercury. You know, for over 400 years, this is a quote from here in the Virginia Mercury from Delegate Torian. I think he puts it perfectly. For over 400 years ago, people who look like Delegate Scott gave their sweat, blood, and tears to help build this Capitol. And he also stated it is his hope that all of us as Virginians will have an appreciation for history. You know, I think when we talk about the people, when we talk about the Commonwealth, when we talk about policy, when we talk about government, I think that sums it up. An appreciation not just for history, but also to understand the significance of the moment and work together here in the Commonwealth for a common good. Jasper, my good friend, listen, it's so good to talk with you. So good to have you here on the show again. Any closing remarks before we end?
No, just remember to vote in November.
Absolutely. Listen.
Vote in November.
Well, look.
It's an early reminder.
Hey, you talk about the presidential election coming up, but look, we've got to get through this General Assembly first. But as always, we want to thank you so much for joining us, as you always do, on this beautiful Sunday here on WNSP Hot 91, the Soul of VA, on Stay the Water, where we bring movers, shakers, and policymakers to you to discuss issues important to the community. Until next time, be well, be great, God bless, and we'll see you next week.
Hi, I'm Carrie Washington, and you're listening to State of the Water with award-winning host Dr. Eric Claville.